the world's strangest accident while testing a new rocket ship. Our heroes were bombarded by mysterious cosmic rays from outer space. Though they crash-landed safely, the strange and powerful rays had changed.
Welcome back to This Week in Comics, although it should be Last Week in Comics given how late these videos are coming out. But this week I picked up 3 comic books which I wanted to talk about. Remote Space #1, Geiger #3, and Transformers #9. Remote Space #1 by Cliff Rathburn. This book is the first in a 4-issue limited series. It takes place in a future where humans have taken 2 different paths to adapt to a worsening climate crisis. One group has engaged in eugenics so as to make their bodies adapt faster to the ever-changing world, whereas another group has integrated themselves with AI. We follow 2 characters in this story. The first is Zoe, who is one of the eugenic characters, and that group is currently incapable of reproducing due to the alterations to their genetics that they've engaged in. And the only way for them to be able to reproduce again is for them to obtain some pure human DNA. And that introduces our second character, who is Lola Doulos. She's a human who lives among the technocratic group, but unfortunately, she's part of a 3.6% population of the youth who is incapable of integrating with the AI. And so as a result, she's left on Earth to kind of maintain the technology, it seems, that upkeeps the mechanical empire, which has gone into space. So the comic was pretty good. I enjoyed the art especially. There was an action scene in the comic that was awesome, of a giant eugenically altered monster human fighting a robot, and it was very good art. And after researching the artist Cliff Rathburn, he also did work on various Marvel comics. I'm pretty sure inking for Ryan Ottley, and he also did colors on a lot of The Walking Dead, doing the grays. So he's got a lot of credentials under his belt, or experience under his belt, I guess. So it really comes out in this book. It looks great. As far as the story, I have some reservations. In the story setup, there are a couple of elements that I just don't really like very much. Firstly, the climate change nonsense. My generation was raised on the whole climate alarmism, and we've kind of been trained to fear for our future and how the climate's going to play into that. And aside from my personal feelings on whether or not the climate change theories or exactly what's proposed by various things are true, all I know is I don't really like when people continue to stoke that fear in various ways by saying that, oh, there's an incoming crisis, even if it's just a small matter in a story.
How dare you!
So, not really a big fan of that, especially because it has been seen to lead to increased anxiety amongst younger generations. So I think it's just something best not done in a lot of ways, especially when there's not really very much conclusive data on this. Also, it just seems very lazy and just kind of old hat at this point. Lazy in that there's not really much explanation as to what's happening behind this climate change stuff. When it's written in the stories, it's just climate change happened. But that doesn't really explain a lot of times. Was it greenhouse gases? Was it toxic oceans, not planting enough trees, the bees going extinct, whatever various things? Is it a mixture of the things? Is it none of those? Do I just get to pick? It's not really something that explains a lot. And so that I really didn't enjoy much. Another aspect I didn't enjoy is the story explains, and I quote, humans as being hell-bent on self-annihilation. And while certainly that's a human quality, I heavily disagree with that being the defining human quality. I don't think that we would be at this point in society if that was the case. We wouldn't continue to build more and more things. So I don't really agree with that. But aside from my personal feelings too, I just don't really think that negative expressions of humanity are very good for creating good stories, especially because you're writing stories for humanity. The last thing is something I might get in trouble for talking about, but such is life. Both characters are female, the main characters, and while that's not itself a problem, it seems as though they are both being prepped to be strong female characters, or the strong female lead type, the stereotype, the modern stereotype that is. And I just hope that doesn't happen, because that type of character really fails to capture actual femininity, such as grace, comfort, motherly love, or emotional maturity. And I just hope that the story's kind of over to overcome that stereotype, because that's a problem that comics often have, is that they really fail to write women well. They're either overly sexualized or the strong female lead type, both of which really don't actually capture at least any of the women I know in life. So all that being said, I'm definitely going to be picking up this book for one reason and one reason only, and it's that it's a one-man show. Cliff Rathburn has written, drawn, and colored all of this, so that's highly respectable, and I really like that when artists do that. Geiger number 3, written by Geoff Johns and art by Gary Frank. So this week, Geiger travels to a library and he picks up a replacement book for a book that burned up in the last issue. And shortly after he gets the book, he fights some monsters, and the replacement book also gets destroyed. And his friend Nate the Knight, who he's traveling with, chides him a bit for this, and Geiger snaps over it, explaining that books are a really important thing to him, and it was important to his family as well, and so this is something that really connects him to that. And he storms off after snapping at Nate and goes to bed, and while he sleeps, Nate goes to another library, picks up a replacement book, another one, for Geiger. And when Geiger wakes, he finds this and he's rather happy, and he finds Nate also reading a book and he's crying, and he explains to Geiger that the book he's reading, The Velveteen Rabbit, is the book that his mother read him when he was younger, and he turns to him crying and tells him, I understand what you were saying now. I get it. And holy hell, this is an incredible comic. I don't think I've ever been as close to tears as I was with this book when it comes to a comic book that is like, if I'm to think in depth about this is incredibly beautiful. In fact, I don't know if I know another story that really captures the love for literature as well as this does. Honestly, this is a gift of a story from Geoff Johns, and man, I'm in awe of what he wrote this issue. It's beautiful, and the art, as always, by Gary Frank is beautiful. But oh my gosh, this is an 11 out of 10, and this is something I think, I'm going to go, buy multiple copies of this and share it with my family, because I really do think this is a beautiful story. Transformers number 9, written by Daniel Warren Johnson and art by Mike Spicer. So this issue, like every issue before, is a roller coaster. Soundwave and Shockwave open a portal between Cybertron and Earth, and Optimus Prime and some Autobots are flying over the ocean when this portal begins to open. And as it does so, it breaks the wing of Jetfire, which brings the Autobots crashing down to the portal site, and they begin to fight the Decepticons. Meanwhile, at the hospital where Spike is recovering, a Decepticon comes to take him, and instead of making him kill everybody in the hospital to get to him, he just goes with him. back at the portal, the Autobots are being overrun, and Shockwave suplexes Optimus Prime, taking him out. And before kind of the Autobots can be completely overtaken, Alita comes limping through the portal, dragging a very broken down Ultra Magnus with her, and she gets to Optimus and kind of kicks his butt into gear to get him to transform, and tells him to get her and Magnus out of there, abandoning some of the Autobots in the process, much to Optimus's dismay. But those Autobots are left in Shockwave. He says that he's going to experiment on them, and that's pretty wild, obviously. Meanwhile, before the end of the issue, Spike is saved by an Autobot named Beachcomber, or Beachcomber, perhaps. In fact, this is a Transformer I've never seen before, so that's part of what's very exciting about this run, is I'm getting to learn about some of these characters who I've never heard of before, for one, or I've perhaps saw once or twice in the show while I was watching as a kid, and mind you, that was 20 years ago. But there are things that it's reminding me of a simpler time in my life. So I broke down this book pretty quick because, as I said in the beginning, it's a roller coaster, and it's I'm pretty sure this entire story, this issue, takes place in like an hour, if that. Maybe it can't be too long. Like, the battle starts right at the beginning of the issue, and it's them exchanging laser fire, if I'm not mistaken, and fighting fisticuffs, giant robots that can't last for more than perhaps 20 to 30 minutes. So even then, book might not last more than 20 to 30 minutes. So it's pretty darn fast, and a good bit happens in it. A couple Autobots die. Ratchet dies, in fact. That was a big shock. I'm hoping he comes back. To touch on the art real quick, in these books, I love Mike Spicer's work, and I think it's Jorge Corona's the colorist. That looks great. It's very cartoony and loose, and I think it's especially fitting for this book because, as I was saying at one point there, I watched this stuff 20 years ago as a kid, and this is the kind of art I think as a child I would have really loved, especially just because of its cartoony nature, and it's still very well done and professional. So overall, I really love the art. To touch a little more on the story, though, which I like a lot, but one thing I wanted to mention is that it is incredibly high octane, and has been so the entire time. I'm kind of waiting for the story to slow down, and have been for a little bit now. There was one slow moment there, but it was a slow moment in the middle of craziness. And I think it was the 4th or 5th issue, and it's like people have died, and the slow moment is them dealing with death for what seems like a day, maybe, or more, a couple days. I don't know. It's just this book has been going really fast, and I think they could benefit from some downtime for some more character development, especially about what's motivating these Autobots. Obviously, I have history with the Autobots. At least I understand what's going on with the Autobots a lot of time, but it'd be nice to know what's going on in this new universe. But that being said, too, from what I understand, these Transformers books so far are just an intro to the new Energon universe. I don't know when they're going to kind of slow down and start hitting a bit more of a normal story pace, but I imagine it's going to be after they finish doing all the various G.I. Joe stories they've been rolling out, the limited series that is, and then after they kind of establish what the new G.I. Joe is going to be in this universe and how that's going to look in that area, then I think they'll start to calm things down a bit, because it has just been majorly action-packed, which I don't think is incredibly problematic. It's great art, and it's been really cool to see a lot of the Transformers. It's just they need a little bit of character development. All that being said, I was very excited to pick this book up, and I'm incredibly excited to pick the next one up because I can't wait to see what happens. I mean, something that I think Skybound has done really well is they really honor these characters. And from what I've heard, from what I've read, and from what I've seen so far, that is definitely the case, and a lot of people love what they're doing with these characters. So I love it, and I hope that they continue. So that's it for this week in comics, or last week in comics, like I said. I'm also going to do a quick video on the Ultimate X-Men, because I picked that up this last week too, and I have some opinions on that I'd like to share. And then I'd also like to do a video on the Rippaverse comics. I got my Geiger #1 in the mail this last week, and my Rippazine. They're up here. And I'm really excited to talk about the Rippaverse in general, and Geiger #1, of course, too. So I hope you check back in. Please quit.